Count your blessings. The only thing that could be worse is if Chef Annie is assisting. They're doing a new breakfast today. We've been doing the same breakfast for a couple of years, and while our guests aren't necessarily tired of it, they're tired of cooking it. You can ask our bakers about coconut cream pie, about how that feels 40 years later. What else do we have? We have Cam and Sean trying to figure out our YouTube. We did a pre-tape last week of 4 segments of a book called Oma.
Nice.
By Sarah Ahn, and we can't figure it out. So one segment today we're going to miss out on here, and we'll try and have it figured out by next week. And if you do go back and listen to the show today, you'll be able to pick it up on our podcast.
Yep. So on the podcast when it comes out on Friday, you can hear the whole show. And the
good news is it's a 4-part series, and my last 3 parts were better than the first part.
Well, it's hard on Zoom. That intimacy is
get into the mix there. Yeah. We are live on YouTube right now, so if you have issues with the law, I would suggest ducking.
I'm Loretta. Nice to have you all. I'm going to clap for applause. So if you all could clap along as well, that would be helpful.
I wouldn't do it. Just let her go like this. Just let her go like that.
It gets awkward real quick when I'm just here.
I'll help you out, Loretta.
All right, Cam, are you ready for us? Got your clock on. Welcome to the Hot Stove Society show on Cairo Radio. I'm Chef Tom Douglas.
I'm Loretta Douglas.
She is the one and only child of our family, our media family. Your mother, Jacqueline.
Yes.
And your father, Thomas.
I should hope so.
You should hope so.
Are any others going to come out of the woodwork?
We don't know for sure that you're an only child. I'll just say that right now.
Oh, boy. I don't know why you would say that about yourself.
Just saying. We're coming to you live from the kitchen studios here at the Hotel Andra in downtown Seattle. If you haven't been,
it's beautiful.
It's a gorgeous little kind of boutique hotel, and we are at 4th and Virginia downtown. We are doing breakfast here, so when people come and join us, they actually get a little breakfast, some hot coffee. I'm having turmeric ginger tea.
Lovely.
Right now, and because I've had plenty of coffee, it turns out.
Turns out.
I've been blending my own coffee because I'm never happy with the single coffee that I buy. So I buy another one to kind of match up to make my own roast. Right now, I have a Laredo kind of medium roast with a Umbria coffee dark roast. The combo, dynamite.
Really?
Yeah. Sam from Vita comes on once in a while. She would have a heart attack.
Yeah. She would say they've done it a certain way on purpose.
Yeah. And I would tell Sam to go take a hike, Sam. Anyway, we do live breakfast here. Tickets are available at hotstovesociety.com. You can also watch us on YouTube Live on Thursday mornings typically. Today it's Wednesday, but we're packing in a few shows the next 10 days while I'm on a month-long vacation.
Wow.
So first for me, it's the longest vacation of my career. I am 66 years old. I took 4.5 weeks with your mom for her 60th birthday in Paris.
Okay.
And then this will be the longest vacation I've ever taken. This one's halfway with boys for some golf time in Scotland.
Uh-huh.
And the rest of the time is Sicily, Lisbon, and Bordeaux.
Wow. Sounds beautiful.
Not jealous at all.
No, you shouldn't be, really. It's not going to be any fun at all.
There'll be no good wine, no good food. Yeah.
You can listen to us on Saturday and Sunday live I guess it's not live. It's in the can on Cairo while you're driving or in your garden. People are starting to ramp up their gardening.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yesterday was so spectacular. Yeah. It just gave me this hope that maybe we'll get out of it. And I think we have tornado warnings or something this week.
Here's the thing about ramping up your gardening. We're in spring now.
Uh-huh.
I am finally allowed to eat the frozen peas that are in the freezer. Jackie likes to stare at them all winter long. I said, sweetie, this is why we put them up in the freezer. They were frozen last April, May, whenever they were picked. And you've been looking at them for almost a year. They're not getting any better. But she just like, it has to be there until she gets the new ones in the ground.
Okay.
It's the craziest thing.
It's a scarcity mindset, I think.
And good news and congratulations, Jackie, getting a little bit better. You know, she ripped her shoulder rotator cuff digging sweet potatoes last summer.
Yep.
They were the gnarliest sweet potatoes, and she was in there both hands. She and Carmen determined, yanking, boom, ripped the rotator cuff. So sweet potatoes are dead to me.
Exactly.
No sweet potatoes ever again.
Upcoming classes here at the Hot Stove: the Tapas Tour of Barcelona with Chef Bridget Charters on April the 11th. Bridget's making breakfast this morning. Going to be delish. Dim Sum Brunch with Chef Rashida Russley on Saturday the 12th. I want to do that one because everyone's experience at dim sum is different. I have my favorites. And I just went to the most highly touted dim sum place in Seattle these days. Just opened 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, something like that, called Triumph Valley. I guess there's one in Renton, and there's now one up by the north, Shoreline Town and Country in that parking lot. It used to be a Chinese buffet, which your mom would never let me go into, even though I love a trashy buffet. But I went by myself because she wouldn't go. I went by myself and had dim sum.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite
I will say the Normai Guy and the Lo Bak Go, two of my kind of all-timers, the best I've had.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm there.
And I will also say that I drove into the parking lot and I almost drove out because at 10:30 or 9:30 for a 10 o'clock opening, line out the door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that comes sometimes. That happens. And that was on a Monday. Just say. All right. Seattle Restaurant Week is coming up March 30th to April 12th. Please get out and support your local restaurants. We appreciate you. Participating restaurants of ours: Lola, Neb. If you haven't been to Neb yet, it's super cute. Half Shell down in the Pike Place Market. Palace Kitchen and Serious Pie. You can check all the menus out at srweek.org. All right. On on today's show, we're going to dive into Niçoise salad.
One of my favorites.
When I put this on the menu at Cafe Sport when we opened in 1984, the owner of the restaurant came in and he says, "Now tell me about that Niçoise salad." And people have always had a hard time about pronouncing the word Niçoise.
Yeah.
And I think Chef Terry would say you don't pronounce the S at the end.
Niçoise.
It's Niçoise. And I always want to call it Niçoise.
Yeah.
But anyway, so be it. Sarah Ahn is going to join us with her new book. It's the first in a 4-part series, Amma, A Korean Mom's Kitchen Wisdom and 100 Family Recipes. We're going to talk a little bit about baby back ribs and why they can be so expensive or so cheap.
Yeah, one of your favorites.
One of my favorites. Forager and author Jennifer Hahn joins us with her new book, Pacific Harvest, a Northwest Foraging Guide. And I've seen these books over the years, because there's one guy that chased raccoons and squirrels around Seattle and cut them up in his bathtub and ate them. I've seen foraging books around. This is the best one I've seen.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
It's really beautiful.
And I like a couple of different aspects of it. One being what critters, what animals, what things, what people live on these ingredients outside of us just going out and foraging for them. I like that thought. She's also going to help us dig some clams.
Yes.
I love that. Based on a recent article in the Seattle Times, we're going to ask why so many Seattle restaurants are closing. And then you read the next week that twice as many have opened.
Yeah, and many times in the same
space
location.
And sometimes in the same, they're announced in that location before the first business closes. Fully. It is the ultimate entrepreneur's business, I think, because there's a little bit low cost of entry, and it's such a rewarding social business on top of it. And then you run out of money.
And energy.
So we don't even need to do the segment. I think I just covered it.
We just covered it.
And of course, we're going to wrap up the show with food for thought, tasty trivia. Loretta, you have stolen my taste of the week.
I have.
And
that's because it was really good.
Here's the thing about it. I purchased it. I brought it to your house. I served it. And now it's your taste of the week.
Yeah.
And
partially probably because you did all of those things. Yeah. I like when it just appears in front of me. It makes it even more delicious.
Dying to hear what it is.
Well, just walking into her house with bags of food, you get attacked by 3 wild children.
Yeah. 3 feral toddlers.
Feral toddlers.
So, so my taste of the week, and I think it was yours, is a dish called salmon in the Red Sea. And it is served at what I think is probably both of our favorite neighborhood Thai restaurants in Seattle, which is Thai Siam. It's on 15th and 85th-ish.
Between 80th and 85th,
Yeah.
on the west side of the road.
And it is a spicy red curry salmon with spinach. So it tastes
In a red, in a nice thick coconut cream.
thick coconut milk red curry. Yeah.
And fried basil.
Ooh.
It's very delicious. I mean, the pieces of salmon yesterday we got were insane.
And it's wild salmon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is previously frozen, but so is a lot of salmon.
It's just delicious. It's the right amount of spicy. It is perfect over rice. It tastes fresh. It gives you that Thai flavor. It's a perfect dish. And, it's a very also nostalgic dish for me. I can't remember not going to Thai Siam. I don't know.
We always did. It's
must
been
be,
open 38 years
Yeah.
and you're not quite that old.
I'm
Almost.
assuming when we moved to the house in Blue Ridge is when we started going there because it was close up there. And to me, it's just like this touchstone dish and flavor in my life.
You know what's funny you
And-
say that is that it's closer to our old house at 73rd and 12th than it is to our Blue Ridge house.
But you and I went all the time. Thai food isn't like mom's favorite food, I would think. So sometimes like when it was you and I, we would pick up Thai together or go eat there together. But it's still, when I think of like, I want Thai takeout, I don't know if it's truly the best.
We've never been to Thailand, right?
No, but when I want it in Seattle, even like, I don't know if Thai Siam is the best, but it is the best to me, I think, because it is the one that I've been eating for 30 years. And that dish in particular.
And that
is
dish.
delicious.
And so I got in the habit of buying that dinner, which is what I brought for you, the pad sayu, which is the big wide rice noodles with broccoli and beef, and also the salmon in the Red Sea, which is the salmon fillet kind of steamed with this coconut milk and peppers and spinach together. Because it left me a perfect breakfast the next morning to reheat. And I always get the brown rice with my salmon. I like that earthy combo. But somehow or another, it got left at your house last night, so I'm not very happy about this. Okay, my taste of the week. As I mentioned, I went to the new Triumph Valley. Ton Vin, I think from the Times, said it's the best current dim sum in Seattle. And I kind of I don't rail. I kind of like, I'm never super impressed with the dim sum in Seattle. It's all fine. It's just nothing's over the top good, like Yang Sing in San Francisco. But even in Hong Kong, I felt the same way.
Okay.
The home of dim sum, like nothing really kind of struck me. So maybe my expectations are too high. But I will say, I ordered my regulars. So I ordered lo bak o, which is a daikon radish cake thickened with rice flour and cut, chilled,
One of my
cut, and
favorite
then
foods ever.
pan fried.
Really? Okay.
Really the bomb good. And I just wish that they would let me order it extra crispy.
I know.
But nobody had let you
I
do
always
that.
take an order to go and then
pan fried at home.
at home.
And then one of my other favorites is Nor My Guy, which is the sticky rice, the glutinous rice with a piece of lup chong in the center, and wrapped in a lotus leaf and steamed.
Oh, that's why you went by yourself, so you didn't have to fight
I don't
over
have
the
to fight you for
fight
the
me for the
lup
lup chong in the center.
So anyway, that was perfect. So often it's undercooked and not cooked long enough. It was the bomb. And then I ordered the barbecue pork humbao baked, not steamed. And they were good. Not great. They were a little too sweet. They were eating like pork donuts.
Yeah.
Which is probably what they're
I think that's the
intended to be.
intention,
Yeah.
I had a fourth thing. Oh, I had the soup dumplings, the Xylem Bao,
Love.
but they put truffles in it, which didn't have a lot of truffle flavor, as canned truffles tend to not have. But it was just, I thought they were trying to be extra fancy. And
Yeah, I think
appreciate
Din
the
Tai
effort.
Fung does like a truffle one also.
Xylem
I
Bao
think
was
it's
really on point, though.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
well.
And the
thank you.
shumai. I didn't love the shumai.
When are we going?
Didn't love the shumai.
Didn't love the shumai. Okay.
That's my review.
When are we going?
All in all, I would say in the last 10 years, that's the best selection of dim sum. The only problem is no carts.
Yeah,
You love a
miss
good
the
cart. Okay. Niswa's Salad on Cairo Radio. It's the Hot Stove Society show. 97.3 FM. Your Madeleines are perfect.
Wow.
I'm not sure who said that. So unlike me.
They are delicious. They are.
Annie, Bridget, tell us quickly about the Madeleines. Tell us about the Madeleines.
This is Annie's recipe. It's a brown butter Madeleine.
Oh, that's what.
Madeleines traditionally were made in France because the bakers weren't done with the croissant, so they had these small, quick breads that they would make in the early mornings in the bakery for the business people going to work. They could stop in for a financier, as in the finance guys. There were Madeleines, because those were quick and ready to go. And so then when the croissants were finished and came out, we get later when they're mid-afternoon, they're high butter content, flour, eggs, the brown butter, which you have to brown it and then cool it. And that gets folded into those whipped foamy eggs. And then flour is folded in, and Annie said, where's that?
By weight, how much butter is the percentage? Like in a croissant, a good croissant is 66 to 68% butter. Did you guys know that?
It's shocking for folks.
Yeah. Think about that next time you want to add butter to your croissant. 40% butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's equal parts butter to flour
Yeah.
and then the eggs.
So I hope you had a health directive before you came in to the show today. You have a health directive? Okay, good.
Just finished my will.
Really? Just now?
Well, I had one before, but we
Okay.
just
Updates.
Taylor, what's going on over there? You look like you're poised.
the paparazzi.
Oh. Oh, Taylor's our social media expert. And typically she knows to leave me out of the picture because, as they say, I have a face made for radio.
And she has some friends visiting in the audience
Really?
too.
You have
Yeah.
friends? That's fantastic news. We are back here in the kitchen on Cairo. We are celebrating our 25th year on the air here at Cairo, so which means they'll probably fire us at any point.
Absolutely.
It's time for a niçoise salad, although it's a little bit, we're jumping the gun just a touch because there's some little things in classic, what I find classic niçoise
Right.
salad
But
that are not spring.
right. And
They're
that's
more summer.
But the
You?
point is that halibut season just happened. Just like they started coming in on Sunday.
Uh-huh.
So it's time. I thought, how could we celebrate that?
How could we celebrate halibut when
Yeah.
classically it's a tuna niçoise?
Yep.
Okay, so tell us about this. It's not tuna, it's not spring vegetables, but we have a niçoise salad. Tell us about your
Well,
niçoise.
here's the history. The niçoise salad originated in Nice, France, which is in the Mediterranean coast. The traditional salad niçoise was a simple rustic dish made with raw vegetable seasonal ingredients. They included tomatoes, hard-boiled eggs, anchovy fillets, or occasionally tuna, but never both. Olives.
What do you mean never both?
Never both. It was either in the classic original, the niçoise.
But you never
folks.
both what?
Never both
And
tuna
egg
and
tuna
anchovy.
or
anchovy and
oh,
tuna.
anchovy and
Eat one or the other.
Okay.
And that's it.
Don't mix your fish.
Yep. And they had the niçoise olives, of course, red bell pepper, rarely or barely blanched baby artichokes, cucumbers, spring onions, basil, olive oil. No lettuce, green beans, or potatoes. Those are later additions.
So, to my point of seasonality, you could really look at that because the tuna almost always was canned tuna. It wasn't like they were,
Right?
we often do here, which is go get fresh tuna and sear it rare, slice it, put it on top. It's almost always
canned.
in France canned tuna.
Mhm.
And you could see them doing the same maybe with some of their preserved vegetables that they had canned.
Mhm. That makes sense.
Well, and for spring, I mean, they really didn't put the summer vegetables in there
Mhm.
originally, it sounds like.
So
So,
in the spring,
bell
you're going-
peppers, baby artichokes, which we're getting, spring onions. So
Mhm.
you're not waiting on lettuces and green beans the way that
New potatoes.
yeah,
True.
new potatoes
Yeah.
that we
True.
do now.
And so the classic one that we're all familiar with is often the tuna, potatoes, blanched green beans, olives, lettuce, and mustard vinaigrette. Correct? Am I missing anything?
No, I think that's about
yeah,
right.
tomato,
Yeah.
egg.
When I made my one originally at Cafe Sport in '84, I made a lavender blossom dressing,
Oh, interesting.
and the first dozen people that ordered it sent it back because it tasted like soap.
Oh, yeah.
Because nobody was used to getting that lavender.
Uh-huh.
So
I
I had to-
cannot believe that you made a lavender blossom.
I did a lot of things.
So much she was putting soap in dishes.
And so here we are.
For things generally in
Well, I put
To
it.
my
I also put
knowledge.
it in the goat cheese fondue.
yeah.
10
At the
years
Palace,
after that
too.
at the Palace Kitchen. So, you can't put baby in a corner.
Okay.
See, you're trying to box me in. No way. You're the baby. So let's make one today.
Okay.
It's the end of March. Let's make a niçoise salad.
Should we make it with the fresh halibut?
Sure, why not? What are
Okay.
we going to do with that? Do you have any thoughts?
I'd probably just pan fry it on the front.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Okay. All right. What would you do?
I would take that beautiful halibut that
Uh-huh.
is super white and very bland,
Mhm.
right? Because it's a white, it's basically a large sole.
Mhm.
Think about it that way. And I would slowly poach it in
Poach it.
olive oil
Wow.
and butter combination,
Wow.
but maybe at 175, 180 degrees for 3 or 4 hours, depending on when it gets to 120 degrees. So
Okay.
I'm not sure. It might not even take 20 minutes, depending on kind of how you set up your poaching.
And does the fat go all the way above the fillet?
Above the
Okay.
fish,
So just,
yeah. So that's the first thing I would do is I'd have a really big party because you don't want to do all that olive oil for
And-
one person.
Right.
And then if you did 15 or 20 pieces of that in a nice deep Le Creuset or something,
Mhm.
it cooks so slowly and beautiful.
Mm.
No higher than 175.
Okay.
And just use your meat thermometer to check your fat temperature. So that's where I would start. And then I would, once it got to 110, 115, I would turn off the heat and just let it sit there and soak up all that flavor.
Mm.
How you season your olive oil is kind of up to you. I would throw some garlic cloves in there, maybe some fresh thyme sprigs, little things like that.
Mhm.
It's going to give you a lovely black peppercorns or pink peppercorns. Pink peppercorns.
So
Give you
trendy.
kind of a lovely fragrance.
Yeah, that's
Maybe some
beautiful.
lavender blossoms.
No, absolutely not.
Lavender halibut.
Lavender halibut. So anyway, so that's where I'd start.
And when you poach something in olive oil and butter, it really doesn't absorb much of it. We
No, but it will
just-
absorb the fragrance of the poach.
Yes, yes. That's,
Right.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like,
But you have to decide what you're going to do there, because if you were to cut that halibut in 2-inch baseball cut kind of chunks, it's going to infuse that fish much more than if you cut it in a half-inch thick,
Mhm.
blah blah blah. So
I don't think people poach fish enough or anything enough.
I haven't thought about
love
it
a good
for so long. We did
Yeah.
at summer camp maybe 15 years ago. We did salmon and it was
Yeah.
amazing.
Chef Terry, I mean,
That's-
he always poached in
Uh-huh.
butter or olive oil. That was his thing.
But I think that kind of goes to that feeling of the spring niçoise, which is just the purity of flavor. You're not getting that crust in the same
Mhm.
way. It's like
That you would get if it was
that you would get if you were
pan-fried, yeah.
pan searing, and it's
Can you
just
believe
this
Becky
really.
said pan-fried?
Oh my god!
Oh my
Fired,
God.
Becky.
Again.
Okay, so our base is what? Let's just say it's right now. There's kale and there's chard. So nice.
And there's some radicchio too. And
some Treviso or
Yeah.
something like that.
yep.
I don't know where radicchio is growing in our area right now,
Mhm.
but certainly you can harvest overwintered chard and kale. Just you guys are going to get some chard in your crepe today, and that's what I would do, kind of for the base, a chopped kind of sautéed chard base, so that you have a green.
Yeah. I just saw Oregon arugula,
Arugula is
Yeah.
perfect.
Arugula would
You
be
can
good. I don't know.
Purslane is starting to come
right?
up.
To me, I'm not into the sautéed green piece.
Well, what are you going to do for green? We're trying to stay seasonal and local.
Arugula.
This is why we have our guests coming up. What should we use for our spring green out there, Missy?
Ooh,
Miner's lettuce.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Chickweed and miner's
You gotta-
lettuce.
Get out there and forage.
But I don't. To me, the beauty of the Niçoise is kind of in its rawness in a lot of ways, and I don't like a sautéed chard doesn't hit that note for me.
Well, you are. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but in reality, if you're doing what we're going to do is a hard-boiled egg. It's a boiled potato. It's blanched asparagus. It's poached halibut. So it's not really
Raw.
that kind of. It's not a tossed salad.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, when you think about it from that perspective.
Reasonable minds can disagree.
And it's also radish
Who
season.
said you were being reasonable?
You
It's
said I had
also
the best
radishes.
palate in the
Yes,
family.
radishes
Yeah,
are out. I
radishes.
just saw Easter radishes.
Yeah.
Didn't know they existed.
Yeah, well, they are different
Radish,
they're just
spring
different colors.
asparagus.
Yeah.
Asparagus for sure, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, instead of green
Comes
beans,
in
why not
instead
do
of green
asparagus
beans,
this time of year? So
All right. Then what about the beautiful vinaigrette?
beautiful vinaigrette. I would stick with the mustard
Yes, absolutely.
personally. So
Me too.
we
I
make.
have Terry's right here.
Okay, let's
You guys
hear it.
want to hear it?
Yeah.
1 tablespoon of Dijon
By
mustard.
the way, though, for those of you who are listening, maybe for the first time, Chef Terry is our reference to our co-host for 24 years on the show, who passed
the chef in the hat.
Chef in the Hat.
Yeah. Charming French. So 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar or sherry, to 3 tablespoons of olive oil, salt and pepper. And then optional ingredients are 1 small shallot finely minced, fresh herbs like chives or tarragon finely chopped. And then just whisk that all together and
Yeah.
put the herbs in last.
So I make a dressing essentially that almost probably weekly. I just make it in like a old jam jar or mason jar and then shake it. But I use the French tarragon Dijon
Oh, that's
because
good.
it gives you that tarragon flavor in there. And if you're,
It's perfect for this.
I don't
dish,
go
too.
through enough fresh herbs, honestly, to
Mhm.
keep them all on hand all the time. And then I always do a little lemon, like fresh lemon juice, and a squeeze of honey because I think it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Just,
I
like,
think a
sweetens
little,
it up a little bit.
sweet balance on.
Yeah.
I will say this: I was at the grocery store the other day, and I just finished up my last of the tarragon mustard. That you learn to love that in my house.
Mhm.
And I talk about it all the time on this show. And there are things that I go to the grocery store to get that are sold out. I think the power of this Hot Stove Society radio
Sure.
is quite amazing.
Mm.
All right, author Sarah Ahn is coming up. We taped this last week, but it's a 4-part segment, and her book is called Oma, and it's MMA. And if you remember in Crazy Rich Asians, everyone went to Oma's house to make dumplings, right?
A Korean mom's kitchen wisdom and 100 family recipes.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear.
It's
Super
beautiful.
fun. The book is beautiful.
It is. America's
So
Test
first
Kitchen.
of 4 parts coming up next on Cairo Radio. It's the Hot Stove Society Show, 97.3 FM. Sorry, our technical difficulties. We can't let you in on the first episode. Oh, you got it?
Wow.
Well, let's try it.
But what I don't like is I didn't know I was going to be on, and I moved around a lot. I was very distracting. So I did the visual. I didn't
Oh,
realize.
the visual one.
Yeah, I always thought it was just you and her.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Tom Douglas.
I was looking at the bald spot in my head. All right, play it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Welcome back. It's the Hot Stove Society Show. Let's get started with Sarah Ahn, author with her mother of a new book called Oma, UMMA, 100 Korean recipes from the family kitchen. Let's do this, Cam.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Tom Douglas, and we are happy to be joining you with Sarah Ahn,
better.
creator of Honest Kitchen, AHNEST,
Sound better.
and Nam Soon Ahn, who's her mother, who's not with us today, but we're going to honor her a bit during this segment. Sarah, I sometimes fall in love with books, cookbooks, especially because they are so informative and gender a spirit. And so it's not often that your book inspired us to do a series of interviews with you, kind of going through the book, because I couldn't get it all into one 12-minute segment. So we're going to do 4, and we're going to run them over the next couple of weeks. But let's get started on the first one that I find interesting, which is you're here today, but your mom, who has inspired you, your Uma, is not. And this book is really a Korean mom's kitchen wisdom and 100 family recipes. Tell us a little bit about your fabulous Uma.
Yes, so Oma in Korean it just means mom, and I wanted to dedicate a cookbook to her recipes and every history and story behind the recipes. And my mom's a former restaurant owner and chef, and so her food is not only delicious, but they're also just so full of wisdom, and there's so much history behind her recipes that she's learned from her grandmother and beyond. And I wanted to collect all of that, especially as a Korean American where I'm not even fluent in Korean. So to learn those recipes, it was very important to pass down those traditions.
Is it more Korean than, say, other cultures, do you think, of this family tradition of around the kitchen table, around food and culture?
You know, I would say it's pretty common, at least in Asian cuisine, to name one, where we all come together to eat and rejoice and reunite. And so I do think it's pretty common, but it is definitely very common in Korean culture.
And is that reflected in the actual recipes that are passed down? I mean, I would imagine bibimbap, you know, there's a few recipes that transcend into American cuisine, right? Bibimbap, the Korean fried chicken, things like that. Is it common in your households in Korea that every family's version would be different or similar?
I think, you know, they're pretty similar. In a sense that there's certain things that Korean moms do that you'll find in other Korean moms that's very clear in the book. Where when you read it, a Korean person will be like, "Oh yeah, that's what we do. She's for sure Korean." And so I do think there's some similarities in that sense that there's a foundation. But with every Korean that comes from a different region, a different background, there's little special things that each family does.
Yeah, that's funny how you kind of have to pass the test. You know, it's like you hear Americans saying, "Well, that restaurant was full of Asians. It must be a good Chinese restaurant," or you have to pass the test.
Exactly. I have a favorite Chinese restaurant here in Tustin, California, and when I walk in, I know immediately I'm the only Korean, and it is damn well the best Chinese restaurant ever.
That was very funny. Becky, you are super interested in this book also.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts about your mom and your mom's cooking? Do you feel like Sarah, where you had to get some of this down in your life for maybe your kids?
I do. I've got a couple recipes. You know, she's no longer with us. Sarah's mom is still here. And I just love the relationship. And Sarah, that you've taken the time to gather all these recipes. And you and your mom are so close. She doesn't speak English, but I've watched some of the pieces that she does, and she's so charming. And she has a cooking background where my mom didn't. So it's pretty special to watch you and read this book. It's just beautiful. The techniques, I feel like it's approachable. I could even try some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Korean food, what I learned from this, because I had to retest all the recipes once they're finalized. Korean food's very simple to make. There's just sometimes a lot of easy steps. But overall, nothing about those steps are difficult, which is something I really appreciate.
Is Korean food a little bit like other Asian foods where maybe the store-bought sauces that you don't think about, say, in French cooking, the store-bought sauces are super important? And this is on my mind because I went to a new Chinese restaurant up in my neighborhood that's supposed to be better than all the other Chinese restaurants, right? And I had the Peking duck, which is a favorite of mine, a specialty, not a super flavorful dish. It's just crispy skin and moist duck. But the hoisin sauce that they used was terrible. And it's like, even I, as this non-Asian guy, can tell them 5 better hoisin sauces that they could have used for this $45 half a duck. So is Korean food that way? Because you see all these things on the shelves of Asian groceries. Is it important to find the right ingredient, not just the fact that it's Korean?
I think to some degree, yes. Like in Korean, we use specific brands for gochujang, soy sauce, doenjang, which is fermented soybean paste. And those little differences make a whole difference in the recipe. And that's why in our book, we specifically say, this is the brand that we use in case you want the exact replica of the recipe that we tasted. So yeah, those brands and having those favorite brands really do make or break a recipe. It brings it up from a recipe that could be rated a C to B to an A+.
Yeah, so true.
And I appreciate that you've got a whole chapter on the pantry, the Korean pantry.
Yes.
It looks approachable, looks really fun. Do you have some favorites that your mom, growing up with your mom, that she cooked for you or with you?
I would say some of my favorites would have to be something like kimchi stew, which is something that you can't really find at Korean restaurants, but it's a stew that you can make with very fermented kimchi. And it's something that became my favorite because when you taste it, it immediately brings you back to Omma's home. And that's something that is so unexplainable, and it transcends you into a moment in time where I don't know this level of pain yet, but when my mom isn't here, I feel like that's going to take me back to a home where I grew up. And those recipes is what makes it very special that you just can't find at restaurants.
You live in a time, Sarah, that when we used to write biographies of our parents and things, it was really the written word. Now with social media and video, and you are getting down in real time with real people, the history of your cuisine. How is that developing, and how's that changed the way you approach your book and your channels, all the places that you show up online?
Yeah, that's a great question because Honest Kitchen started as a blog. I've always been a writer, but in order for people to see the work that I was putting out, I moved to social media, which is a completely different medium. It's a completely different audience. And writing this book really brought me back to who I was and what I enjoy. I think that social media has been great. There's pros and cons to it, of course. You have to give up some of your life, your privacy, in order to gain some awareness and to connect with people. But overall, it's been a great medium to connect with people and share this richness in life that I share, and find people who live a very similar lifestyle and enjoy Korean food. So there's a give and take with social media. And writing the book has definitely made me feel much more connected to my storytelling.
Boy, and just having the history down quite literally, ingredient by ingredient, what with her cooking is amazing. When you look at TikTok videos or reels or something, these recipes get done in sometimes 20 or 30 seconds. That must be a challenge when it comes to something like an aged kimchi.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the art of social media. It's like, how do you edit something that takes hours and days to make into a short attention span of video? And that's how you ultimately market a recipe.
Yeah, super fun. My last question, and people always ask me the next food trends, and I tend to look at where we've been fighting the last wars. Can you look back in your life and see how the Korean War affected the menus of Korean families? Like when I go to Hawaii, I see it all the time, right? With Spam and burgers and stuff like that. How did the Korean War affect the dinner table of the Korean family? Because that's kind of the age of your mother, right?
Yeah, my mom grew up at a time where the Korean War just happened, and same with the Japanese occupation, particularly her grandma. And there was a time when during the Japanese occupation, white rice, something we don't ever think about, something we don't finish if there's leftovers, was considered a luxury. And when that happened, Korea didn't have access to white rice because it was used to address Japan's white rice shortage. We found ways to overcome that by putting multigrains in our rice, such as millet, beans, and different healthy things that you could really stretch out your rice with if you had a little amount of white rice. And that became known as multigrain rice, and it's a rice that we eat today because it's considered healthy. But back then, it was all they had. And if they could get a bowl of white rice, that to them was the lottery. And it's changed so much where healthy foods are now praised. And oftentimes a poor man's food is now praised because it's healthier, it's heartier. But back then it was far from that.
Isn't it? It's so funny how it all works. I've noticed that in a few videos that there's always that multi-grain rice at a Korean office lunch or wherever there's a group of people eating. There's a steaming pot of multi-grain rice. Next time we talk, we're going to talk a little bit about the art of kimchi. We're talking with Sarah Ahn, AHN. The book is called Uma, A Korean Mom's Kitchen Wisdom and 100 Family Recipes. Thank you, and we'll be back next week with our next chapter.
And don't forget, you can go see Sarah Ahn at the Book Larder in Fremont on April 14th at 6:00 p.m. And her mom,
And
right?
her mom,
mom's going to be
yes.
there too. So fun. All right, when we come back, it's time for Baby Back Ribs on Cairo Radio. It's the Hot Stove Society Show, 97.3 FM. Hey, Shonda Torrey, are you going to tell them? Shonda Torrey, there's 2 opens there if you want to pick one or the other.
I made a note.
Okay.
So they're also going to be on, I think, Northwest or some show that morning. And they asked, Carrie Bachman reached out for a stylist. So Bridget's going to go do that.
Really?
Yeah. And they said, bring a box because the mom is really short. And she needs to stand on a box.
Have you ever told you my mom story?
No.
I was on book tour with book number 1 or 2, I don't know, but you end up going to all these news stations around the country. You do morning shows, afternoon shows, all kinds of things. So I'm in Dallas doing the morning show. It's like a 3-minute segment. And the anchor, there's a box next to me, and the anchor is super short. He's like, I wouldn't bet he was more than 5 or 5'1", something like that. But he'd been giving me a hard time. And so I had the kitchen set up. They have these funky little kitchens in all the news stations where you barely get a burner. Blah, blah, blah. So he comes getting ready to go on the air. He comes over and stands on his milk crate next to me so that he's kind of almost eye to eye. It was still not quite. And
You called him
he
out.
ticked me off so much that I'd left a bottle of olive oil over here on this side of the set. I said, can you hand me the olive oil? That's so
Tom Douglas. That is fantastic.
And he just looked at me, and he's standing on his box, and it's about 3 steps away. He just looked at me, and I said, "Oh, never mind, I'll get it." And I had to walk over.
A little passive aggressive. That's awesome.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Life lesson.
There you go. That's cute. How's the breakfast? Yay. Thanks. I can fruit. Thank you. Do you want some of the fruit? I love crepes, so.
We couldn't decide this morning, but I think it needs a fried egg. What do you think? Little break the egg yolk over the crepe kind of thing.
I don't think it needs both the mushrooms and the fried egg.
We are back here in the kitchen. It's time to be thinking about baby back ribs in your household and how they fit into your meal planning, because out of this last week, the sun was out. It got to be like 65, 68 degrees. That's coming. It's coming our way. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but it's coming our way.
Can't wait.
And you'll see baby back ribs in all sorts of stores at this point. Sometimes they're not carried in a store until more spring, summer months. But one of the things you'll notice now is that baby back ribs are more expensive than the solid meat tenderloin, that like pork center cut tenderloin.
Why is that?
So let's talk. Well, because they're more in demand.
Okay.
Baby back rib is 50%, if not more, bone, maybe 60% bone. So you get the nice meat in between the bones, which is luscious. And then a pork loin, center cut pork loin, is 100% meat. It's about $4 a pound. Baby back ribs can be somewhere between $6 and $8 a pound. So you have to buy them when they're on sale,
Mhm.
or you have to go to Costco. They're always cheaper at Costco. If you buy a pork loin, bone in, the bone on the back of the pork loin is the baby back rib.
Okay, so it's just a
So-
smaller rib. It's not from a young pig.
It's not from a young pig.
Okay.
It's just the smaller rack of ribs.
Okay.
And that's what I can tell you about baby back ribs. You'll see the spec, in the biz, I'm in the biz.
Yeah.
In the biz, you'll see what they call the spec, which is the cut. Like if I call my meat company and say, I want 10 New York steaks, half-inch fat, leave the tail on, individually packed. That is my spec
Oh, your
my
specification.
And,
Got it.
14 ounce
Okay.
or 16 ounce, and then they'll cut to my spec. Well, on baby backs, when I was a younger chef, back when I would use lavender and everything, baby back ribs were like, because the pork loin was so much more valuable than the back ribs, they would skin them all the way to you'd literally see the bone sticking through the meat.
Okay.
Now, when you buy baby back ribs, you'll see that there's close to a half-inch of meat on the bones that they've taken off the loin, because now the ribs are more expensive and they make more money on the ribs than they do the loin. So it's funny how the spec has changed
Yeah.
in how they cut meat. And that happens all the time. They're always looking for ways.
Yeah.
Like that's why you see on a chicken, like a quartered chicken, when you cut it open, you'll see they always leave the backbone in. If you're buying just a leg or a thigh, there's no backbone. But when you buy a quarter chicken and it's cheaper, you open it up and you'll see that
Less
the
meat.
whole skeleton of the animal is left on the pieces, just part of how they can sell them cheaper, and the fat globules and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just be aware of the spec when you're purchasing. Okay, baby back ribs. Loretta,
I feel like baby back ribs are kind of your thing. I mean, as
whoa,
No,
what does that mean?
well, I don't mean in like in the world, but I just mean to me when I think about something that you get excited to cook or cook relatively often, it is ribs, because you like to do them on your grill, you like to tend to them, and you make them in a multitude of ways. You either do like the hoisin ribs, you do barbecue ribs.
Yeah.
And I just think of it as like one of your meals that you kind of own, I guess. When
Right.
you talk about like, what do you own? To me, hoisin baby back ribs are a meal that you own.
So hoisin is of like a fermented soybean and miso condiment. It's like Chinese ketchup
Yeah.
almost. So here's where I'll clarify for you
Okay.
your memory. Your mother doesn't like heavy smoke.
Yeah.
You don't like fat. Baby backs compared to spare ribs are much leaner.
Hmm.
Especially, I mean, they just are. They're much leaner than a spare rib in certain parts of it. And so spare ribs for me are what I like to cook the most.
Okay.
Because they're a 4 or 5 hour, they're on the smoke, they come off nice and juicy, they have some technique to them. Baby backs can be cooked in 30 minutes, 45 minutes on the charcoal grill, depending on your heat.
Okay.
Because they're super tender. As soon as you cook them, they're tender. Whereas spare ribs tend to need that time
To get tender.
to
Okay.
tenderize.
Are spare ribs the longer ones? Okay.
And so that's kind of the difference in how we would look at that.
Look at that. Okay.
I moved to baby backs for your mom and for you
Great. That's
because I'm a
kind.
giver.
Yeah.
That's my nature is to take care of my
So
family.
generous.
Yeah, exactly. And I buy them for your mom and for you, even when they're more expensive.
Then the spare ribs.
Well, spare ribs are never super expensive because they're
Okay.
a different cut, right?
Okay.
People don't want to take the time for spare ribs, and baby backs have that name.
Yeah, the Chili's song made it
Yeah.
famous.
Baby bip. Yeah, exactly.
We all know that one. So when you
So-
you buy the ribs, what do you do next? How do you prepare them?
So almost always when you buy those ribs, they are cryovac. So cryovac means they're kind of sealed up in plastic, and you'll see all the kind of the juice that has been released. So you want to cut open that plastic, drain the juice, pull the baby backs out, and put them on a cookie rack,
Mm-hmm.
on a cookie sheet with the cooling rack on it, right? You want to let that sit for a day in your fridge.
Okay.
Because all that juice, it's not blood, but it doesn't, especially if it's like 3 or 4 weeks old, it's still good, but it has an odor to it
Mhm.
that you want to kind of bloom off
Okay.
and get rid of. That's essentially what you do with the baby backs. Then on the back side of the baby backs, you'll see there's a film.
So the underside,
The underside,
curved.
yeah. Right, the part where there's really no meat.
Okay.
Right? You'll see there's a film there, and you can choose to or to not to take that film off.
Mhm.
And I simply take a boning knife and I get the film started, and then I use a little paper towel, I grab it and just pull it all the way down the rack of ribs, and that comes off. To do or to not do, you'll see almost every serious barbecuer takes that off.
Takes it off. Yeah.
What I like about leaving it on is that as the meat cooks, that fat that film captures the fat from in between, and it kind of, you can see the fat kind of bubbling in between your ribs, so it's kind of like you're confit
Yeah.
the meat of the pork on that side. When you turn it over, it all goes away anyway. So,
Right.
But the only reason to take the film off is that when you eat it, it kind of cooks a little bit separately and gets a little bit, sometimes crispy. Sometimes you want to pull it out of your mouth like a fish bone or something like that, because it's. But I don't mind it.
And I also read some butchers will just take it off for you if you're not buying the cryovac. If you're buying,
Buying it from a
Right.
butcher shop or
Then
something.
they
Yeah,
can
you
take
could
that
ask
for you.
them to.
And you'll see at Costco, for example, you'll see in the case, there's a whole case of cryovac baby back ribs. And then you might see right next to it, in a more traditional meat case pack with a foam tray and the plastic wrap, because they've taken those loins, they're taking the loin off, selling the loin separately from the ribs. And so
okay.
they have two kinds of baby backs. It's the same thing, essentially. So I go to D&D Meats up in Montlake Terrace, is one of the best butcher shops around. There's many, but it's one of the best because they're so informative about all these
Yeah.
types of things.
Yeah.
So, and they sell our product. They sell a lot of rub with love, which we appreciate. So now cook. When
Dry
they're-
rub. Like you're not.
I put a small amount
Okay.
of dry rub. You can eat, cook 45 minutes. They're done.
Okay.
Personally, your mom and I like the sauce glazed on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unless I'm doing a real traditional smoke, like a barbecue or a competition barbecue type of thing. If I'm just making it for me, I put my sauce on and then I damper up so my fire gets hot again, and I glaze the sauce on.
And that just means you're letting the sauce caramelize onto the rib rather than having like a dry rib that you sauce yourself on your plate.
Correct.
Okay.
And a traditional, smoker, like barbecue house, they would never do that.
Okay.
Right? It maybe in some parts of the country they would, but most parts, it's all about the meat, and then it's all about the sauce separate.
And if you're a home cook and you're doing it in your oven, I've heard that you could just put the broiler on, but don't walk away.
If you're doing it in your oven, you should have halibut for dinner.
Okay. Listener question. Thank you, Kristen. She wants to know about freezing. She's really trying to fill it. Could you freeze this and bring them back?
Freeze what?
Freeze your
The cooked ribs?
The extra ribs. Yeah. Cooked ribs.
I guess you could. Sure. Why not?
You don't ever end up with extras. No. Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just eat them the next day or whenever.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
I've never frozen a leftover pork rib. When the pork ribs, even in the refrigerator, when they sit on the bone, they tend to pick up more of the bone flavor. And so you have to kind of like that.
Okay.
That's the same reason I don't like boiling. My mother always boiled them and then put the sauce on and put them in her oven because she wasn't a barbecuer. But we've grown past that, haven't we?
Yes, we've matured.
Yes, we have, haven't we?
But you
Becky?
could cut it off the bone and then like use the meat in a hash or things like
Sure,
that if you have
100%.
extra. Yeah.
100%. All right, we feel good about baby backs.
Yeah.
I would say if they're $8.99, buy something else.
Okay.
But you'll see them out there on sale at $3.29, $3.99, and if they're in cryovac, they'll last at least a couple of weeks in your fridge.
Okay.
So you buy them when you see them, and then have them in the next couple of weeks or tonight. Sounds good. All right, Jennifer Hahn's going to join us. She is a forager, has a new book out called Pacific Harvest, the Northwest Coast of Foraging. And we're going to talk to her because she's
Exciting.
cool.
Yeah.
On Cairo Radio, it's the Hot Stove Society Show, 97.3 FM. Hi, Jennifer. Come on down. I guess he's getting you a chair.
Now, I was hoping I would have one of those boxes.
Yeah, exactly. We have them back here for our short instructors.
Is that about right? Okay.
When was the last time you all foraged for this?
Oh.
Have you never had a wild watermelon before?
Gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Wouldn't that be funny to walk through the Olympic rainforest and see a whole patch of watermelons? Somebody just spread the seeds out there.
I think you got to punk someone. Put some of those watermelons on a trail, you know.
Yeah.
We can also do.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, that's not going to be as good. But so you can kind of, if you want to flirt. I don't like that, but you can. Yeah.
Your shadow's in the picture there.
It is, yeah.
Taylor.
I know. It's kind of tricky. Right?
You know, I'm a professional photographer.
Well, that's Kelsey. Can't believe she's not here. So,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
the shadow.
Jennifer, let's practice. Get
Okay.
right up on that thing.
How's this, Tom?
That's better.
That good? Thank you.
Nothing back here. All up here.
All up here. Okay.
Is this the seaweed you foraged yesterday?
This seaweed here was not foraged yesterday. There was, I didn't go out yesterday.
Hmm.
This was foraged last summer
Really good.
because the bullpen wasn't ready to go yet.
Mm.
No. Oh,
You didn't know you were going to get a second fruit plate, did you? All right, you ready to go, Jennifer?
I'm ready to go, Tom.
All right.
Laundry is so loud. Does that bother you?
What is?
The laundry?
No, it's not bothering
Okay.
me. It's a din.
It
Your
feels
kids
like-
live with that every day. You fall asleep to that every day. Hey, it's the Hot Stove Society Show, hour number 2. Thank you for keeping track of us. Got a good looking audience today who's just received a beautiful watermelon, avocado, cheese, and bull kelp salad.
And bull kelp. Yep.
Bull kelp salad. Our guest is author, scientist, forager, seaweed evangelist, culinary explorer, Alaska wilderness guide, Jennifer Hahn.
Oh.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I am delighted to be here.
And we are the same to have you. A Pacific Harvest, a Northwest Coast foraging guide is the title of the book that we're working out of today. And I love this first line of the back of the cover. It says, "Local food is a passport to a comforting sense of place." And to me, I would probably add time to that too, especially from our seasonality perspective. Place, time, and then history.
Yes.
Because some of these traditions that you're kind of almost discovering on your own have been traditions for 1,000 years. Yeah. So welcome to the show and tell us about your book.
Thank you. So the book Pacific Harvest is really a love story for wild plants and animals of the Pacific Coast. And I started foraging in this area of the coast about 44 years ago. And most of it was by sea kayak. And so one of the things I did to keep my kayak light on long expeditions was to harvest everything from sea urchin to seaweeds to wild and weedy greens. And as time went on, people said, "Well, you teach me." And then as time went on, I started to guide in Alaska, and there were amazing chefs on the boats that I guide on. And so my one-pot dinners became a little more complex after that. So the book is really an exploration of about 78 different species here on the coast. And the coast goes all the way up into the kind of, what would I say? It's really summit to sea. And
The whole inland passage,
yes,
all
the
the way
whole
up to
inland
Juneau.
passage.
And,
yes. So really Southeast Alaska all the way down to Northern California.
Okay.
That would be this big belt. And I really wanted people to understand that foraging, we're not the one and only out there picking, that all of these plants and animals have got a lot of gifts that they give, and they basically feed a lot of other species. So
I thought that was so interesting in your book, that whole idea.
well, I thought of anything that I wanted to learn. I wanted to know who else eats this and who shelters here.
Uh-huh.
And so I teach a wild food class at Western Washington University at Fairhaven College. And I had my students help me with the research because that stuff is not easy to find. And I think that's why you don't see it in many books. So we went to scientific papers and talked to specialists and came up with these little information paragraphs for each species.
So do you just camp out by a spruce tree and watch what happens, or how do you
could
figure out?
totally do that. Like when I was writing the book, I was sitting in my writing area, looking out the window, and I saw these deer come through and then stand on their hind legs and eat the yellow leaves, only the yellow leaves of the vine maple. They left all the green leaves. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So then I started to search, is there anybody that has been eating the yellow vine maple leaves? And it turned out the Japanese make a tempura just out of the yellow leaves that have fallen
Interesting.
down in the fall onto the ground. They have to have fallen. So that is one way I observed that.
Uh-huh.
And your example of mushrooms high on trees from,
Oh, yes. So one of the most amazing things I think about the mushrooms in the Northwest forest is we wouldn't have those mushrooms, many of them, without some of the, I call them sporinators. These would be like the red squirrel, the flying squirrel, the red-backed vole, which looks like a little linebacker mouse. And they come along and they eat like a porcini mushroom, just a little bit to taste it, and then they carry it. This would be the squirrels would do this. They carry it all the way up the tree and they'd spike it on a little branch so that it dries out. And then after that porcini is dry, they stuff it in a little spot in the trees that have, it's called a witch's broom. Looks kind of like a lot of sticks sticking out, but inside they hollow it out, and that is their cache area.
Huh.
So they, as they're crawling across the forest floor with the mushroom, they're dropping they're dropping spores that are on their paws, they're on their whiskers, and as they poop, they leave a lot of little spore packages that are perfect for mushrooms to flourish.
Isn't that crazy?
So crazy.
I love it.
It is. It's really wonderful.
A lot of times when foragers come to my back doors at the restaurants, they'll have porcini mushrooms. And oftentimes you see that on the heads, the little squirrel gnawing marks on the heads. So I don't know if they wrestled them for that mushroom or if the squirrel didn't like the taste of that particular mushroom.
Those are good questions. Well, it makes me think of the caches that the grizzly bears in Yellowstone, they found that the female grizzly bears love morel mushrooms. And they also go into a cache of a white pine tree that basically the squirrels will take the nuts out and cache them somewhere. And so the grizzly bears go find those caches. But as those caches have become less in number because the white pine is having trouble because of climate change, they're eating more morel mushrooms. So that's kind of the story behind why you might leave some of those mushrooms for all the other animals.
and your first foraging book you wrote about 15 years ago. And how has foraging changed in these last 15 years?
You know, I have seen a lot of changes, especially because I spend a lot of time on the coast when I'm guiding. And one of the things I've seen is that the trees have suffered because of droughts, severe droughts. And so you see a lot of areas here and there in Southeast Alaska, also down here in our land, we have 6 acres. And I look at the big leaf maples, they're getting a crown die off, and that means they're getting shriveled leaves at the top. Some of the grand fir have also been getting really, really thin. They've lost a lot of needles. So these drought and then rain and then drought cycles really stress the trees. And they found that the trees, when they're drawing up water, eventually if there's a drought, they still keep drawing up through capillary action the dry air, and that dries them out even more. That's a recent discovery.
Interesting.
Any positive changes?
Oh, yes. Of course, there are always positive changes. There are certainly some invasives that are doing better and better. So everything from Japanese knotweed, which is a delicious kind of wild rhubarb, to the savory clam, another introduced clam that's doing well even with warmer oceans. Some of the seaweeds are shifting, and we're getting sometimes a little bit more sargassum seaweed, which is another, well, it can be a little problematic, but that's another seaweed that's changed. I would say other positives would be that more and more people are aware of these changes, and so they're foraging a little more carefully. And I think we can target different species that you like, especially it's wonderful to eat invasives and weeds. And you don't have to have a big pile of wild food to make a plate really just a little bit different. Like this small salad you ate had just a little bit of bullwhip kelp, but it's like almost like prosciutto, where it's salty, and this one's very mineral forward, kind of oceany, briny.
It's delicious.
And it just takes a little bit of a flavor profile and changes it.
So you are, let's go into that for a second. You're a seaweed evangelist. You have a master's degree in seaweedology.
I do.
And you put some dried kelp on here. To me, I think prosciutto is a good, almost like a crispy prosciutto is a good explanation for what this kelp is doing. It's really not a foraged salad.
No.
It's watermelon, avocado, cheese, and with some lime. But by adding that, is it bull kelp?
Yep, bull kelp.
Kind of dried bull kelp that you harvested this last summer, it changes the dynamic of the salad 100%. And I think sometimes people think when you're eating foraged food, you're eating exactly what you just mentioned, a big pile of weeds. Whereas it can really be a beautiful accent to another dish that you've made.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing to remember is like a bite of wild food. Even when you're out foraging, you don't have to have 2 gallons of huckleberries. You could come back with 2 cups of huckleberries and make a wonderful sorbet and cut it with berries that you have in your garden or you bought from the farmer's market. And so mixing the wild in with the kind of gardened is a really nice way to approach foraging.
And extend.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Because you're not always going to fight the bears for the wild huckleberries.
No, you're not going to always.
And when you're talking about invasive species, I think I read something about a sea urchin that is invasive that if you're encouraging people to eat.
Yeah. So the sea urchin, basically, when I think about climate change, and not just climate change, maybe I should also say how things have changed on the coast due to everything from sea star wasting disease, which is basically one of the stories behind the sea urchin. In Northern California, they ended up over-harvesting what's called the adult sheephead fish. And this is a really delicious fish, but it was over-harvested. And then sea star wasting disease came along, and the giant sunstar, which is like as big as a pizza pan almost, those also died back. And suddenly the purple urchins, which were eaten by the sheephead and by the giant sunstar, just proliferated. So now the kelp has been harvested by the urchins down to nubbins, and the kelp forests have been really kind of hurt between Northern California and Middle Oregon. So eating purple urchins is a marvelous way to forage. And you need a lot of purple urchins to make a tablespoon of uni, but uni is the beautiful orange eggs inside. But nonetheless, that is like target those.
Okay. Thank
Fascinating how ecosystems work like that. And one little change can impact the whole system.
Yes.
One of the things in our very own backyards that I don't think I see very often people eating is rose petals. And I have pickled them with a simple little vinegar and a touch of sugar, but just taking fresh rose petals, unsprayed ones, by the way, and then pickling them quickly for like a beet salad or something of that nature. Roasted roasted carrots with pickled rose petals, things like that are a simple way that you can forage in your very own yard.
Fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And in your very own yard, there's one weed you should look for. It's the hairy cat's ear. Looks like a dandelion, but it's really fuzzy, kind of like a flannel shirt, but it tastes like romaine. And so it has a flower just like a dandelion too.
Awesome.
For it.
All right. When we come back, let's talk clams.
Clam
You know,
sounds delicious.
Chef Terry and I got in trouble on this show for not knowing our way around clam digging.
That was you and me.
Was that you and I?
Yeah.
Oh,
The razor clamming.
Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to talk clams when we come back on Cairo Radio.
Wonderful.
It's Jennifer Hahn and her new book, Pacific Harvest.
Yeah, that was cute. That was last year. And then the person who was running the whole festival called in and said, no,
That
this
we
is
were
the
full of
truth.
baloney.
Yes, this is the truth.
That is hilarious.
This is really good. Is this one in your cookbook or is this one in your
Yes,
book?
that one's in the cookbook. Yep.
And is that the dulce bacon one or that was a different one?
No. Oh, I really wanted to make
I
you
wanted
the
to make
dulce
that
bacon.
before, but
Oh, I even thought of throwing the dulce bacon on here instead.
What's on the popcorn?
So the popcorn has got this is the kaffir lime leaves, curry. This particular seaweed we're putting on that is the Lummi Island sea greens. So this is a harvested sugar kelp, and it's harvested from it's really the first farm that was established just for growing seaweed in the state. And they just harvested this last summer. So that's what you have in there, the sugar kelp. And sugar kelp has got, let's see, let me think here. Curry, sugar kelp, salt. Oh, I can't, I got to tell you.
Do you have that?
No, I don't have
It's
this.
my version of togarashi. It's got a nice little shredded nori in there. So
Oh, really? I can't wait to try it on popcorn as well.
I've used it on popcorn, but I use it on everything. So
What's your favorite to use it on?
probably like a grilled shrimp or seared tuna. Things like
Yeah.
that. You got to be careful if you're searing it because it will burn quickly. The chilies burn fast.
Okay.
okay, we're going to do a drawing for the audience to get one of Jennifer's books.
All right.
Oh my gosh. This is really, no one did the accordion fold. Don't you know about that? The accordion fold, that helps you win.
Wow.
Oh, I get to. Okay.
For a free copy of the book that is signed.
Oh, yes, and it will be signed. Melinda, you got a book. Woohoo!
You're supposed to say something like, I've never won anything before. Okay, we're back in the kitchens, the lovely kitchens here at the Hotel Andra, Hot Stove Society Kitchen Studios, where we do lots of classes, both public classes, like we have, I'm doing a Masa Masters class here pretty soon. Bridget's doing, anyway, we do lots of classes. And then we also have corporate buyouts, which is super fun too. Okay, Jennifer Hahn is our guest. We're going to continue our conversation about her new book, Pacific Harvest, a Northwest Coast foraging guide. And when you say Northwest, you are really talking about Northern California all the way up to, say, Juneau or that whole area of Southern Alaska.
Yeah, really, that's kind of called the Northwest Coast Belt. It has a lot of similar plants in that whole area and animals. And so that's actually like a big coastal ecosystem you could just call that the Northwest. It
Now,
really is.
Are most of your trips walking or are they kayaking that you lead?
Yeah. So I do some trips for like North Cascade Institute, and we walk down to the beach, we harvest the seaweeds, we cook. But then I also do trips on this wonderful old minesweeper. That's, yes, a minesweeper that's been refurbished for ecotourism. And that we go to for like 6 to 10 day trip. We go out to different beaches and islands and Southeast Alaska.
Amazing.
That sounds fun.
Yes.
I have taken a float plane. I do work for Evening, which is a show on King TV here. And we've taken float planes out and landed on the beach over in Whidbey Island or something. Went out to the rafts and got the mussels, brought them back to the beach and cooked on my portable burner that I brought with me. How do you get a burner in a kayak?
Oh, well, when I used to run my own kayak company, I had giant 2-person kayaks, and I had a red one for the dinner boat, a blue one for every boat was color coordinated with things. And the stove boat was the white boat. And so we had a giant, well, it was giant for us, a 2-burner Coleman stove in that. And that's easy. That's actually pretty easy. And then when I kayak alone, I just use a little Svea stove.
Camp burner. Kind of.
Yep.
Little tiny burner. Okay, clams. What kind of clams can we get here in the Pacific Northwest?
Oh my gosh, we are in like clam heaven here. And when I think about clams, I think about kind of where they grow and then in the depth of the sand. And so let's start at the top of the beach. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so for a tide that might be about 0 to minus 0.5 feet, you would start at the top and you could dig at that point what are called the Manila or the little neck clams. And they have a little tiny neck. That's why they're way up on the beach and they're not very deep. So you can dig only 3 to 5 inches with a rake and come up with all these Manila clams.
So you're saying like right when you walk into the tide in that little area there, or not further in at all?
Well, the people make the mistake where they go all the way to the low tide area and they pass up some of the best Manila clam and little neck clam area. So, and I did that just 2 years ago. I noticed that. I looked and looked and looked, and then I went up high. By that time, the tide was way up. I couldn't forage anymore down farther. And suddenly I hit the like bingo of Manila clams.
Okay.
So after that, you keep going down the beach, and one of the next clams you'll start to encounter, and this one will be at about 8 inches to a foot, and that's going to be the savory clam. Actually, savory clam would be a little bit higher, but you're going to start to get heart cockles. And then next you'll come to the butter clams and the gooey ducks. For those, and as well as not just the butter clam, the gooey duck and the horse clam, they are all in a little deeper water, deeper in the beach too. So you would need a -2 tide for gooey ducks or horse clams. When you dig for those, you're going to be shoulder, like your whole arm goes into the hole. You just keep digging and digging and digging. But there's
What's it feel like when you get to that snout, man?
By that time, the snout usually pulls in. But here's one of the tricks of the trade. If you take like a bucket, the kind of bucket you can buy, oh, look at this.
5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, 5-gallon bucket. And you cut the bottom out.
Brilliant.
And you find that little, it's called a show. And that's the dimple where the top of the siphon is right under the sand or the gravel. And you, let's say this is your, this would be a really big dimple.
Remember, you're on the radio.
Oh, yes. So you're going to take this bucket and you're going to put it over that dimple and you're going to snug it back and forth, wiggling it side to side and pushing and pushing and pushing until you can get it as deep in the sand around that show as possible. And then after that, you're going to start to remove all the sand inside the bucket, and it won't be collapsing in the hole on top of the clam and hiding it. And the water will stay away too. So that's the trick, is to use a bottomless bucket.
Bottomless 5-gallon bucket.
Now in the South Sound, you see just miles of PVC pipe where they're farming gooey duck or...
Yes, and they put a screen over the top of that because there's a lot of things that love gooey duck, including there will be some of the crabs will go ahead and eat the siphon off. So will some of the fish.
Oh, that's not nice.
I know.
Eat the crab. That's what I say.
That's right.
Yes.
All
That's
stuffed,
what I
all ready
say.
to go.
And then what about, I've done razor clamming, super fun. And that's, you need a gun for that.
Yeah, so razor clamming. So we're going to have some really good low tide seasons coming up. And it just opened up today, razor clamming in Washington on the 26th of March. And it's going to go all the way through to May. They have tentative dates there. And the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Health is kind of tracking things for us. And when they decide that there's a good season, they open it up. And there's no what's called domoic acid. That's what they're looking for, something they measure in the clams. Then you can go. And the beautiful thing about this season right now is we have both the end of the night low tides, and then we have the morning low tides that are in the day. So in the winter, you're clamming at night with your headlamp. Now we're going to start moving in the time where you can just be out there seeing with your eyes.
Fun.
And so with razor clams, you need 15 clams max you could take. And you have to take every single one you dig, even if you go ahead and damage it while you're digging. And that's where a clam gun is really nice, because a clam gun is a lot easier to dig a clam and not injure I should say, not break it in half with the shovel. And those clam guns, they're worth the investment. You take that long tube and push it right over the show and work it down. And meanwhile, you've got this like long handle that comes out from the tube that has a T shape kind of area your hands go. And there's a little hole underneath that T shape. And that's where the air escapes as you're pushing this thing in. So that's one of the things you'll learn too, is that you put your finger over that when you pull up and out comes a big core sample of sand, and hopefully there's a clam in there. If not, you go to the next show and try that.
All right, we're on the beach. We've got ourselves some beautiful razor clams. You have a knife and a cutting board so that you can clean them up. What's your go-to to get the sand out of them? Because, you know, there's all these things with cornmeal and water. I mean, just all kinds of kind of, what's the word I want?
And stories
supposed
and myths.
tricks and myths,
Yeah,
I will say, but who knows? Some myths are real.
You know, it's interesting when I am using horse clams and when I'm digging the clams that are the razor clams, I often clean them in a way that I'm not necessarily putting cornmeal in water or anything like that. I take the clam and I stick it either in boiling water for just a few seconds, pull it out and put it in a bath of ice or cold water, or I pour boiling water over it just till they open. That makes it a lot easier to cut the adductor muscles, those muscles that hold the shell together. And after I cut those, I've got the clam in my hand, the meat, and with a scissors, I will open up the siphon. The siphon has two tubes that come up that are attached to one another. I cut one siphon, rinse the sand out, cut the other siphon, rinse the sand out. I cut all the viscera, kind of a little brown scuzzy thing on the outside off, and the lungs. And then I work with them from there.
And that's the thing that's beautiful about razor clams is it's all protein. There's no stomach in it. It's all clean and beautiful.
It is. It's really clean meat. I mean, I make oftentimes a ceviche with melon and things like that in it too.
Lovely.
I was just thinking about all the different things I've done with clams over the years, but the manila clams, a little bit different, I would think, is how you clean them, because you're not going to shuck those. Where I'm from originally, some 47 years ago on the East Coast, cherry stone clams were a big thing, and God, I hated shucking those. I've cut myself more time shucking clams than any other thing I did in the kitchen, because you got to use that left hand to slide the clam knife in, and it just comes off sometimes into your hand.
Oh, it does.
Yes, it does.
Yes. I know, like Rosie Caillou, she's a Samish elder, and she was showing me how to open a butter clam, and she holds that clam real firm, and she gets that knife, works it in between the two shells, and scrapes it real quickly along the adductor on both sides, and boom, the clam opens.
Yeah, just like an oyster once you get inside, but getting inside is the trick.
Exactly.
All right, the book is called Pacific Harvest, a Northwest Coast Foraging Guide. Jennifer Hahn is the author, and lovely guest that we've had today. Thank you for our taste treats. What did we had the seaweed popcorn, or no? What kind of popcorn?
Yep, that was a
Seaweed popcorn?
Seaweed popcorn with a little bit of kaffir
lime leaves.
Kaffir lime leaves, yeah.
And then also
Curry.
a salad of watermelon, avocado with some dried bull kelp on top from your.
Beautiful.
I want to see you. You're the person I see, that crazy person going by in their kayak by themselves in the waves, or just outside the break, probably along the Washington coast in the pouring rain and wind.
And I'm so happy out there.
I'm glad to know that crazy person now. All right, go check it out on KIRO. It's the Hot Stove Society show. When we come back, are there really that many Seattle restaurants closing, or are they all reopening? On KIRO Radio, 97.3 FM.
Yes. With your book.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
So it's all over the random areas for that, so the tree hill, might be using, what's it called? Very, very thick, like there's like 500 companies here on each map. It's like a scrap of it.
We grab your book right there too. Cute.
You met Taylor.
I love hearing about the kids too.
Okay, don't forget to get our friend the signed book.
Thank you.
You need this one?
So my father, he said, I was
Oh, yeah.
everything was from
That's cute. I love that. You want this one? All right, we're going to keep going here because stay on our clock.
Let's do it.
Here we are wondering why so many Seattle restaurants are closing, and yet it seems like every week we read about 25 new ones opening.
Yes.
That was an article in this last week's Times. I would say it repeats itself every month or 6 weeks. They kind of do this like
An update.
25 closed, 45 open, blah, 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 blah. And I think people are super confused.
I agree.
When you read that, what does it say to you? By the way, I'm Tom Douglas.
Loretta Douglas.
When you read that in the newspaper, Loretta, what does that say to you? Like 25 Seattle restaurants are closing, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like the world is falling. The sky is falling. But then either in the same article or in a week later, they say 45 new restaurants are opening.
I don't know how I feel about them. I mean, I like the closing lists to give the restaurants that are closing kind of their flowers a little bit, and they usually write a nice little story about each of them. And as somebody in the restaurant business, like it's a hard business, so to have the local publications reporting on your business and your closure and what's next for you and things like that, I do feel like they verge into that doom and gloom
It's
territory a bit. It feels
Clickbait.
headliney.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then, the opening list is kind of just an opening list. Like there's not generally a ton about them. They're not reviewing them necessarily.
Because they're not even open. Many aren't even open yet. Yeah. Or they're just open a week or.
In this article, I feel like in reading the comments, some people were having feelings about the fact that it's a Seattle closing list, but the link out to the opening is a non-Seattle, it's a greater Seattle area opening list. And it does say that there's a Seattle opening list coming next week, I think.
I went back and reread it, and I read it as a Seattle area. And, it's like a murder that happens. If it happens in Renton, it's in Seattle, right? Typically, and it depends on the news station that you're watching, because there's some news stations that just want to bust on Seattle, especially nationally, West Coast busting, Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, blah, blah, blah. And there is not a lot of truth to what you're hearing on some of those stations. As somebody who has lived and worked in downtown Seattle for the last close to 50 years, it just isn't a whole lot different than it's ever been. You have boom and bust cycles, you've got crack cycles, and you've got fentanyl cycles, and you've got good cycles, bad cycles, but urban environments are not sterile in that way. And people sometimes expect them to be, and it's like it's unreasonable to even think that. Let's go back to the restaurant side of thing. When you're a new restaurant owner now, right? The last 4 or 5 years, you've joined our company. What does it mean to you? I mean, we're a little bit in the business that it's like show business, right? You read an article about the play coming to the Paramount. You don't read about the dry cleaner coming to your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? We're in that little bit of that show business kind of scenario. When you open or think about our restaurants, do you think they have to be open forever? I mean, to me, there's a natural business cycle, especially in fashion. Restaurants are generally fashion.
I think I used to when I was younger. And I think part of that is growing up in this business. I grew up with those restaurants and they felt like these, especially ours, felt like these kind of permanent fixtures in my life. And now that I am older, now that I am an owner, now that we've been through COVID, and now that I also kind of know you as an adult, I think about it differently because you've always been so on the track of like, we should celebrate the 20 years that we had. That's a really long time for a restaurant, or the 5 years that we, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to last forever. And I also look at you and I think,
I'm not going to last forever.
No, but I think like I would, if I wasn't here and if we didn't have this new ownership group that wanted to continue doing this and you closed because you were retiring, like I'd be thrilled for you to close and retire and go do whatever it is next that you want to do. And if I think that about you, like I think that about anybody that is doing that in the business, Queen Anne Cafe is one of the ones that are closing, and we've known Nick for years, the owner there. And I was talking to him maybe a year ago, and all he wanted to do was retire. It's a hard business. He's been working in the kitchen.
It's like almost 80 years old.
Yeah, it's just he was just ready. And yes, I'm sad to lose that restaurant that I grew up going to and all the things, but I'm also just so happy for him to be able to move on to the next thing. And sometimes it is sad, sometimes the reality of running these businesses is just really hard and it is sad. And, people have invested a lot of their own time and money and effort and tears and things into these places, and to have it not work out, is sad and is hard.
Yeah. I kind of think about it a little bit like a Broadway run. It's like, it was a great run. I mean, is Hamilton not a successful play if it ends up now closing after 10 years because not enough people want to go see it again?
Yeah.
It was a fantastic play. It changed Broadway.
Yeah.
It is what it was.
Yeah.
Cafe Sport, any of our old Dahlia Lounge, any of our old places were fantastic places.
Yeah,
they
I think the Dahlia is a
run.
great example. Like I never could have thought about the Dahlia closing really pre-COVID. To me, the Dahlia was like the cornerstone of who we were as a restaurant company. And, COVID really forced that and forced the issue and forced us to kind of confront the reality of like the Dahlia had run its lifetime, and closing it doesn't
35 years is a long time.
Yeah, closing it doesn't diminish the amazing impact that it had on the Seattle culinary scene in its time and my life and your life and all of those things. So, I think it's hard. I think sometimes I wish the articles would more than just this is opening and this is closing. I wish there could be a broader conversation about what it really is.
Well, that you find in the comments, and almost always they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, like what the reality about running a restaurant in Seattle and in the greater Seattle area really is, because I think people think that they know, and I don't think people always do.
And also, it was that particular story last week was painted with a typical brush from some of the writers at the Times of. Minimum wage has nothing to do with this. This restaurant was in trouble already, blah, blah, blah. Whereas the comments want to paint it all as Seattle minimum wage, putting somebody else out of business. It really isn't that simple.
One of the comments that really bummed me out, there was a place that closed in Ballard, and one of the things that they cited was that there'd been ongoing construction in front of their business for the last year. And, one of the comments said something to the effect of like, well, they just didn't know how to run a business.
That was rude. I read that.
they're just using that as an excuse for not knowing how to run a successful business. What does road construction have to do with anything? And, from a business owner's perspective, I just want to say, man, it has everything to do with it. We had construction outside of Neb for the first year that we were
Year and a
open,
half
and
almost, yeah.
and the minute that it cleared up, the business we were doing there changed because people could actually see that we were there and open and existed.
I
And
mean, it
things like
literally
that.
almost doubled overnight.
Yeah.
Wow.
And people have these kind of like preconceived ideas sometimes about if you knew how to operate a business, you would just figure it out. And I think the reality is there's so many more factors at play into it. And sometimes I just feel like the opening and closing stories,
Don't tell the story.
they don't tell the,
Yeah.
they
And
don't tell the
sometimes,
whole story.
it's got nothing to do with traffic. Sometimes, like, we just had to let go of some people in our own company that were doing some nefarious things.
Yeah.
And that happens, and that can put a restaurant out of business,
Yeah,
So,
if you have a small staff and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have to let go of these 3 people, that's how you open and close every day.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
We're lucky to have reserves in our
Yeah.
company, and I've been covering 2 or 3 shifts a week kind of thing to bridge the gap. But not everybody
Can do
has that,
Yeah.
and if you have theft happening or things like that, not everybody also has the financial reserves that we have to be able to cover those things. And one of the things you've always been pretty good about talking about openly is getting your personal finances to a place that you're not on the street if your restaurant goes out of business.
well, that takes
And
time. Yeah, for sure.
that takes time, but it's also being able to make the hard call about, do I need to close before I get to that point where if something else happens, I'm going to be.
And I
you
would
know.
say that was my weakest link in
Yeah.
my company, was that I would let one of our struggling restaurants go too long and sap the strength of our non-struggling restaurants.
Yeah.
And that is definitely a problem for me, because it's like, you don't like to let a team go.
Right.
Or
Right. It's about the
how do you
people.
look at it from outside the business?
Well, I
when
really
you see
appreciate-
these lists in the Seattle Times.
Yeah, they're not telling the whole story. It's irritating. And I really appreciate how you both described the history of a restaurant, celebrating that history. And it was like the Hamilton example. That was kind of new to me, because I know when restaurants close or someone retires, that is something to,
It's like this always sorrowful thing, and it's not
You know,
necessarily.
people
Sometimes,
it could be,
people look
but it's
at
not
it like a
necessarily.
failure sometimes, like,
Yeah.
oh, that restaurant failed. And to me, it's like, man, if that restaurant in this climate, honestly, I'm like, you made it
10 years, 5
couple
years.
of years, like that is not a failure. You did a really hard thing in a really like hard time
celebrate
to do
and
it.
take the
Yeah.
lessons, and it's just going to evolve. I mean, the restaurant business is constantly evolving.
Yeah, and you can imagine how many youngsters come up to me. I want to open my own restaurant. What's the trick, right? Blah, blah, blah.
There's not just one.
And the first thing I tell them is, don't sign a 10-year lease,
Yeah.
right? Because you never know. If you can get away with it, sign a 2-year and with a 3-year option. You don't even want to sign a 5-year lease. You
Okay.
just want to get your feet in there. You want to have the option to extend,
Mhm.
but God, don't, especially if you're 20 years old or 25 years
Yeah.
old. Why would you put those prime years of your life in a box? You're literally putting them in a box,
Hmm.
and you
And
can't
you don't
move.
know what will change. Like I had twins like completely unexpectedly. If I was not in the, if I was a solo restaurant operator, things like that, like your life can change so
Yeah.
quickly. And I think maintaining whatever flexibility you can in your business to be able to change with it is so important. And,
Yeah, I would
and
Great
plenty of
point.
these closing stories are just like, no, I just want to go do something else. Or no, my life circumstances changed and I got to move to California,
Yeah,
whatever
my
it
parents
is.
are
like,
sick in Des Moines. I'm
Yeah,
going to
I
Des
gotta
Moines.
go, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, all kinds of stories. So yeah, it kind of bugs me, the whole thing where all of a sudden you're not a success because you closed your business, and
Right.
it's just not the case.
Well, I'm looking at it differently now. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, it's time for Food for Thought Tasty Trivia, coming to you by Rub with Love Spice Rubs on Cairo Radio. Stay with us, 97.3 FM. Wow, we got somebody slid in early, huh?
Uh-oh.
No cheating, Missy.
Confident.
I gotta watch it. He's got a lifeline right behind him, Loretta. Be careful with this one.
Uh-oh.
Get right up to that microphone.
All right.
Tip it up a little bit. There we go. You can't get too close. You can be literally right on top.
Right
of
on
it.
top of it.
That
Got
sounds
it.
great. Ben, where are you from?
Issaquah.
Great.
Sorry about that. Last time I was in Issaquah for any length of time, I was doing salmon days.
fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun
Watching the
Yeah.
watching the fish come up, and yeah, I drive by it all the time heading to our farm on the east side,
Yeah.
but I don't get to Issaquah very much,
I
You
drive
have to
by it all
stop
the time
every
too.
once in a while.
especially up on the hill. I never get
No,
up
I
on
don't
the
either.
hill.
Yep. Well, that's where we live up there.
Up on the
Yeah. So we'll wave at you as you go by.
good. I like that. It's like yeah. In case you didn't see that, he flipped me off.
Other way around.
We are back here in the kitchen at the Hot Stove Society. Rub with Love is here to help you with all your March madness. Whoa, who wrote this one?
Carol.
Even if your brackets are busted, you can get some quick and delicious bites ready that will slam dunk your family and friends. Carol is working overtime. Pick up some Rub with Love at your local grocery stores like Town and Country. How do we play the game? And
Okay, you need to get 5 out of 5 questions correct, or at least a question more than
you
them.
think these guys got
We'll
anything?
see. So each of you will get 5 questions, and we have lovely Ben from the audience from Issaquah who's going to go
He's up
second.
on the highs.
He came very confident.
Yes.
So I'm a little
Well, he said he's been listening for 20 years.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
that's exciting. And then the winner, or maybe Ben, will get to take a stroll through the gift shop and get a 3-pack of spice blends. So for free.
Ben, what would you do if I asked your friend to come help me defeat you? Oh, she said no. I can't do it.
No food trivia. That's the Ben. Okay. All right. We're going to start with Loretta first. Loretta, according to Food and Wine, which pizza topping reigns supreme as the most popular topping in the U.S.?
Is it mozzarella or is
No,
it
it's not a
pepperoni?
cheese.
It's not plain
Oh,
cheese,
it's not plain
pepperoni.
cheese. Pardon?
Pepperoni.
You got it. You own a couple pizza restaurants, don't you?
I do, but I also eat a lot of pepperoni pizza at home.
She has 3 children.
That's true. Number 2, what is the name of the warm Italian dip that is made with olive oil, butter, anchovies, and garlic?
You've had this growing up many times. I love it with a piece of fennel.
I know, I just don't know what it's called.
And your godmother, Pamela.
She's talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
There you go.
Bagna cauda.
When you got it. Okay.
That's a tricky one for me. Number 3, what grape variety is used to make French Chablis?
Your mother detests it.
Chardonnay.
You got it. Jackie, it's my favorite. All right. Number 4.
Although she does like the French variety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She likes Chablis.
Yeah, and that's Chardonnay. Yeah. Oh, we just said that. Number 4, sauteed veggies, kimchi, gochujang pepper sauce, soy sauce, and a fried egg are some of the toppings which go on a rice to create what Korean dish, which literally translates to mixed rice?
Bibimbap.
You got it. Bibimbap it is.
That's one of the things she said was that was usually made from leftovers. That's why
Oh, really?
the American
yeah.
version is odd to her because it's planned.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Number 5, where did the iconic dish of spaghetti and meatballs originate? Would you like options?
Yes.
Italy, France, or the United States?
United States.
United States. Yep, by Italian American immigrants. You got it. 4 out of 5. Whew.
Your questions.
Okay, Ben, you ready?
Give it a shot.
Okay, Ben. Number 1, despite debates over its suitable. Sean, can you redo that, please? Number 1, despite debates over its suitability on pizza, which sweet topping is the top choice in 10 states?
Pineapple.
Oh,
my
got it.
God. Who eats pineapple on their pizza?
Love it. Love it.
Do you?
Yes, I
Oh
do.
my God.
That's so good. With olives. Okay, number 2. What is another name for
Wait, you
sable
snuck that in
fish?
there with olives too?
Kalamata.
Not like
Fired,
Kalamata.
Becky.
At least you're
Again?
eating a real olive
No, I love
instead
it.
of a Lindsay.
Kalamata. Another word for sable fish?
Oh.
It's 2 words.
Another 2 words, yes.
Sablefish. Black cod.
You got it, black cod. Good job. Number 3, a turtle candy is commonly made out of which 3 ingredients?
Pecans, caramel, and chocolate.
Nailed it.
Wow, this guy's tough.
Holding
Final
you to it,
question.
chef. Holding you to it.
So you're he's 4 for 4 already?
And he's
I thought he was 3 for 3.
three for three.
Three for
Yes.
three.
Thank you. Number 4. When is the peak season for pomegranates in California? What months?
November, December.
You got it. 4 out of 4. Final question.
It's rude.
Who is this guy?
He's been
You know,
listening.
you're supposed to give it to us as we run the show.
The house is supposed to win.
We'll see. Final question. What is the name of the sweet ricotta-filled dessert that Sicily is famous for?
Oh, cannoli.
Cannoli it is.
5
out of 5.
Way to go, Ben.
Yep.
Sorry, chef. Tiramisu. Should I have said tiramisu?
Yeah, tiramisu. Make it, yeah, and then go back to your Issaquah Highlands.
Okay, Tom. You feeling a little sore?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just took a beating.
Well, you're going to do well. True or false? According to Food and Wine, Arizona and New Mexico stand out with anchovies as their favorite pizza topping.
100% true.
It is true.
Yeah.
That baffles me.
Who knew?
Who knew? Number 2. What is the name of the beloved Sicilian street food made of stuffed risotto?
Arancini.
You got it. You're going to have a lot of that coming up soon.
Maybe so.
Sicily
I'll
is
be
the
in Sicily
capital.
in 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 3. What word of Romanian origin refers to the highly seasoned smoked beef typically served in thin slices that is associated with Jewish cuisine?
Pastrami.
Pastrami. Yes. I wouldn't have gotten that one. Number 4. Who said Italian cooking is very simple, but it's not easy?
Marcella Hazan.
But Marcella, it is.
Why not?
You guys are high scoring today.
I'm
Final
not so surprised.
Final question. Which Spanish delicacy consists of vinegar, pickled white anchovies that are deboned and marinated, resulting in a light, tangy flavor distinct from traditional anchovies?
Bocarones?
Bocarones. Okay,
Oh,
we've got a
yeah.
tie.
Hi.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Okay, it's a fight off.
Mono and
Okay.
Ready,
mono.
set?
Okay.
Just yell it out if you
Just
know.
shout
Shout
it
it
out.
out. Okay.
Unlike its name suggests, where was the Dutch baby pancake first popularized?
Pennsylvania.
You know the answer?
We just had it last week.
Yeah.
I know, I was
You weren't listening.
First populars, original Pancake House.
No, it wasn't that. That's close. But they did have them there. It was Monka's Cafe in Seattle in
Yes.
1940.
Oh, that's right, the Monkas,
Yep.
who still
So-
have a catering company.
All right.
So
Ben's
you
the
win.
winner.
I give.
Yay.
You win.
Well, thank you,
Nice
chef.
job.
Appreciate it.
I should have known that. I heard that last week. You get to have a little stroll through our gift shop and pick out 3 of
Awesome.
rubs for free.
Thank you.
If you want to be part of this show like Ben, you can join the community on YouTube live at Tom Douglas & Co. Or don't be so cheap. Buy a ticket and join us here in the studio at hotstovesociety.com. The show is produced by Becky Guzak. Our technical wizard today was Cameron Thomas. And our editor at Cairo is Sean. Please don't call me Dottore. If you missed any episode of our Hot Stove Society show in Cairo, please just listen via podcast at your favorite podcast app location.
Thank you for listening.
Why was that funny?
Your
she
favorite
was
podcast
ready
app
to go.
location.
We have to go online and pick out the location. Like,
You're really tech wizard over here.
I don't
cute.
appreciate that.
I bet.
Hi, I'm Chef Tom Douglas.
And I'm Loretta Douglas.
Today on the Hot Stove Society radio show, Ben kicks our butt. We dive into spring niçoise salad starring Alaska halibut. We talk baby back ribs, baby back, and author Jennifer Hahn joins us with her new book, Pacific Harvest, the Northwest Coast Foraging Guide.
That's a wrap. Thank you guys.
Nice job, Ben.
Come on over. Do you want to help him pick? Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. She wouldn't help me.